Can we be debunked? Well, I don't see how, since atheism makes no positive claims, but the religious seem to think that they can debunk us, so I'm happy to give them a shot. It's too bad that they're always so bad at it, and this time will be no different. So let's get right back to it. One last time, I'm serious. Getting through this one video has been a challenge because there's just so much concentrated dumb that it all drags on while I have to explain just how dumb it actually is. I'm going to get through the end of this if it kills me, and it might. But no matter what, we're going to be finished with Redeemed Zoomer and his bald rationalizations and religious bullshit this time. He hasn't answered any atheist objections, at least not so far. We don't know what he's going to do this time, but I wouldn't be holding my breath. Instead, he's just offered excuses, which is all the religious can do. So let's get back to it and wrap this up once and for all. Because I don't know about you, but this guy's a moron.
Psychology explains why you believe in God.
To some degree, sure, because psychology explains why we do most things. That's not really an objection to Christianity specifically, but this guy's been all over the map since the start, so sure, why not? Go ahead and make your case, and we'll see if it's at all worthwhile. Let me throw out a prediction right here, not having seen the answer yet. It's going to be some variation of, nuh-uh. Let's see if I'm right.
So what? If God is real, we should expect there to be some psychological or social benefit to believing in him.
But it has nothing at all to do with God being real. Guess what? Hindus derive a psychological benefit from believing in Krishna or other Hindu deities. Same with Muslims and Allah. Are you going to say that that makes those gods real? Or are you just going to ignore the problems with your statement? Notice, he's still playing the if and because game. Virtually all of them do that at this point. They can't show that their gods are real. So they suggest if, when they really mean, well, of course God is real, it's obvious. Yeah, obvious only to you and the other idiots on your side because that's what you want to be true. The rest of us are still waiting for you and your side to make your case and present your evidence. And you're not very good at that, are you?
Spiritual experiences can be explained by brain chemicals.
Indeed they can. In fact, we have devices that can cause you to have them at will. This is well understood in medical circles, but the religious have no interest in the actual reality behind their beliefs. I have had people absolutely deny that the God helmet even exists, even when being shown studies on its effects. Well, it can't be true because my experiences feel so real. Yeah, you're a moron. So let's get back to the other moron and see his rebuttal.
Well, romantic experiences can also be explained by brain chemicals, but that doesn't mean your wife isn't real. So spiritual experiences being explained by brain chemicals doesn't mean that God isn't real.
That's true, but I do have independent and demonstrable evidence for my wife, and you have nothing at all for your God. See, you're not actually answering anything. You're just throwing out snarky comments as a distraction. And you'll see a lot of theists pulling that one. They will claim things like religious experiences exist, and then when we point out that they're just your brain doing what your brain does, and there are perfectly good natural explanations, no gods required, they'll get snarky and say, oh yeah, and go off on some tangent that isn't actually addressing the point being made. I know that my love for my wife is just an electrochemical reaction in my brain. I'm not pretending otherwise. I have evidence that she exists. She was real before I ever loved her. She was real before I ever knew her. The religious can offer absolutely nothing for the existence of their gods. And that's the part they won't address.
Well, drug trips show that spiritual experiences are from the brain.
That is also true. I mean, stupid, but true. When you screw up your brain chemistry, you see bizarre things. That's why drugs are a part of a lot of religious rituals. Now, you don't need drugs. You can do the same thing with eating the wrong foods or not eating them. Fasting can cause hallucinations. So can anxiety or depression. In fact, in 2007, a study found that religious delusions of this kind are strongly correlated with temporolimbic overactivity, which is a condition where irregularities in the brain's limbic system may present as symptoms similar to paranoid schizophrenia. So people who see demons and devils all over the place, it's probably a medical problem, not a psychological one. And that's just what I'm going to throw out there. So let's see what Zoomer has to say.
Well, people who have had both drug trips and near-death experiences say that they're completely different categories of feeling.
Which changes absolutely nothing. It's all still stuff that's happening in your brain. In fact, we can test to see what's going on, and we have. This is why the religious are only claiming subjective experiences, not objective evidence, because they don't actually care about the objective reality or what's really going on. It's just how it feels. Who cares? How it feels is absolutely irrelevant. What matters is what's really going on, and they are not remotely concerned with any of that. This is why taking any of this seriously is pointless. It's talking to immature children who are only looking at being happy and not being rationally correct. I don't care about what insane interpretations you can yank out of your ass. That is not the reality. The reality is something that you can demonstrate with objective evidence is actually going on. And whether you like it or not, only the reality matters.
The story of Jesus was copied from the story of Horus or some other ancient character.
Not really. Certainly there are elements in common because they all came from a specific area and, people talk. But it isn't a direct one-to-one correlation, and you shouldn't be saying that it is. However, the religious also can't ignore the similarities because dying and rising messiahs were really common back in the day. Everybody was making up their own stories about their own gods, and the Jews, they were no different. Just because they really want it to be true, that doesn't make it true. And that's something that they really need to get through their heads. But let's see how Zoomer responds.
Okay, dude, that's a Reddit atheist level myth. Even atheist scholars know that that's silly.
So, no response, just dismissal. Even for this guy, I kind of expected better. You will see this kind of thing a lot, though, because they'd rather just dismiss it without having a conversation, because it gets into some really potentially dangerous territory, doesn't it? I think the reason they do it is because they don't want their followers to realize just how common this trope was. Osiris, Horus, Buddha, Krishna, Zarathustra, Hercules, Mithra, Dionysus, Thammuz, Hermes, Adonis. If more Christians understood that this was just that common in that part of the world at that time, they might start asking some really uncomfortable questions. And if the religious can't answer those questions, things are not going to go well for them. So they try to do anything they can to avoid it. I don't think this is an especially honest way to handle things, but then again, look who we're talking about.
Faith is the opposite of logic and reason.
Absolutely it is. Faith, to use Matt Dillahunty's go-to definition, is the excuse that people give themselves for believing things that they cannot demonstrate are actually true. Faith is emotional. Fact is not. When the religious, or anyone else, appeals to faith, they are just admitting that they don't have a good, reasonable, rational, evidence-based reason to believe any of it is true. Otherwise, they just present the evidence and leave the faith behind. Faith is not a virtue. The religious really need to figure that out.
No, it's not. Faith just means trust.
No, it doesn't. Hebrews 11:1, which is the only place in the entire Bible that defines specifically what faith is, says, "Now faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen." There's no mention of trust whatsoever. Trust in what? Something that you can't demonstrate exists in the first place? Then how is that trust justified? Ask the religious these questions, and they'll back off quickly because they have no answers. They can no more claim trust in God than I can claim trust in invisible, intangible, universe-creating pixies. If your faith isn't well placed in something that is demonstrably real, then how can you reasonably have any trust? They don't have an answer for that, do they? They just really want to believe it.
Anytime you eat food, you're having faith that it's not poisoned, even if you can't scientifically prove it.
Wrong. I know there is food there. I can see it. I can touch it. I can taste it. I can test for it. I don't need faith in the food. I can have prior experience. My wife and I went out to eat last night at a really good local pizza place. We eat there all the time. We walk in, they know exactly what we want, and they don't even bring us menus. They just sit us down, walk away, bring us our food, because we order the same thing every single time. We just sit down, and here comes our food. Do I trust them? Yes, because I know them. I'm actually friends with half the people who work there. I can absolutely prove that they are real, that their food is real, and I have a long-standing personal experience with the food. Is it remotely possible that one of them might go crazy and try to poison me? Maybe. I could see that, maybe. I don't know. But that would be an outlier to all the evidence that I have, whereas the religious have no evidence whatsoever for their imaginary friends. So, no, this is just stupid.
If you're married, you have faith that your wife loves you, even if you can't scientifically prove that.
Except I could if I wanted to. We've talked about fMRIs before, so we don't have to go into all of that again, because love is just an electrochemical reaction in the brain. I could test it if I wanted to, even though I've never shoved her in a machine because I think that's really irrelevant. We've been married for more than 31 years, so I have tons of personal experience that shows that she's trustworthy. Now, could she be cheating on me? Maybe. Although I don't really know when she'd ever have the time any more than I do. I mean, she's at work and then she's home. I'm at work and then I'm home. We don't really go anywhere except with each other. So I'm not really sure how that would actually work.
And if you tried to scientifically prove it, she'd probably get very mad at you because it would mean you didn't trust her.
I don't, because I don't care. Even if she didn't biologically love me, she still acts in a way consistent with a loving relationship, which is all I personally need. Like I said, 31 years and still going strong. I'm not sure what else I need but that.
Evolution proves God didn't create the world.
It proves nothing whatsoever of the sort. In fact, theistic evolution could absolutely be a thing, although we have no evidence for the theistic part of that whatsoever. This is yet another one of those things that I've never seen an atheist say, although I guess I could imagine that it might come from somebody who isn't all that well versed in reality but is also an atheist, so I guess I'll kind of give it to him as a freebie, even though I don't think his response is going to be worthwhile, but let's see.
Well, not necessarily. God often works through natural processes in the Bible, and for all of church history, there have been prominent Christian theologians who have had a more metaphorical interpretation of Genesis, even well over 1,000 years before Darwin existed.
Some of that I'll agree with, since seeing God as metaphorical has certainly been done, but then there's the whole, well, God just works through natural processes, which is not demonstrable at all. It's just a bald assertion. Even if it says so in the Bible, that doesn't make the Bible true. My book says a thing means absolutely nothing. Now, this is a problem that we're going to have with the religious because they aren't interested in the actual, demonstrable, verifiable, evidence-based truth. They just want to feel good about the things that they believe on faith. That's not ever going to be good enough for people who are rational, nor should it be. So this whole question is a complete wash, since the atheist straw man is just that, a straw man, and Zoomer is just spouting blind faith and wishful thinking. It all just comes off as a giant meh.
Christianity only spread because of military conquest.
I wouldn't say only. I mean, largely, yes. Only, no. It spread, at least at the beginning, because the Roman Empire made it not only legal but mandatory, and then they carried Christianity along with them on their military conquests. Christianity has also spread, and still spreads to this day, through unjustified implied threats. Say, that's a nice soul you've got there. It would be a real shame if anything happened to it. Or by withholding actual aid until the poor and destitute professed at least a claim of Christian beliefs. Because, these people are just dicks. You are not helping if you are not helping. And if you're only doing it so you get a chemical buzz in your brain from forcing your beliefs on others, you are not helping at all.
Well, eventually they did do military conquest, but for the first 300 years of Christianity, it was illegal, and it took over the Roman Empire despite that because of how popular it became.
Not really. I mean, Christianity really only became popular once it was legalized by Constantine, and by some accounts, he only did that because his wife and mother converted and pressured him into it. Constantine himself didn't even become baptized until just before he died. Thereafter, it was pushed heavily by the sword and by the missionaries that followed the armies around because they knew that the newly conquered people, they'd be easy pickings. That's how Christianity has spread, by picking on the people who have little choice but to buy into it or else.
Constantine invented what we now know of as Christianity. Again, Reddit atheist level myth. Atheists can do better than that. Listen to an actual scholar.
Which you do not present. Now, I don't think that Constantine inventing Christianity in and of itself is all that justifiable. The actual creator of Christianity was probably Paul, who never demonstrably saw anything or was exposed to anything. He just had a drug trip on the road to Damascus and started talking about it. That said, though, I get it that he's got his 10-minute format and therefore he can't really go into too much detail, but he's not really going into any detail at all, is he? He couldn't provide a citation or anything, maybe something down in the description, anything? Because this really comes off as a nuh-uh, and then moving on before anybody can ask any decent questions.
If Christianity is true, why are there so many denominations of it?
That's a good question. As we know, there are more than 45,000 distinct sects of Christianity, probably more. Wouldn't you think that if there was a real God out there somewhere, that they'd make sure that their supposed word was transmitted in such a way that people could actually understand what they meant? I mean, if I can come up with something like that, then surely a God could, right? Then again, the Christian deity, he's not all that bright as described in the Bible, or even clearly demonstrably real, so I guess, what do you expect? So, Zoomer, what's your take? Something stupid like people just want to sin? I don't know, let's see.
Well, yeah, there are a lot of denominations, but the things they agree on are a lot more significant than the things they disagree on.
Not necessarily. Some of them can't even agree on the basic definition of a god, or what books belong in the Bible, or if Jesus was even God. Christians spend a lot of time playing No True Christian, don't they? True story here, but my best friend back in the late 50s, early 60s, his parents came across the country from West Virginia on a mission trip, and his mother honestly believed that the only reason that the Pope wore a big hat was to hide his horns. There's a huge number of people out there who honestly believe that Catholics aren't Christian, and I've talked to plenty of Catholics who think that Protestants can't be Christians. So this is all just nonsense. Moving on.
There's no evidence for Jesus outside the Bible.
That's true. No demonstrable evidence anyhow. Now, I'm sure he's going to give names like Tacitus or Josephus or whatever, who were just writing about things that they heard from Christians, which isn't evidence for Christianity in and of itself. But I'd love to see any Christian actually produce demonstrable evidence of anything that didn't go back to the silly fairy tales in their big book of multiple choice. Will we ever get any of that here? I wouldn't be holding my breath.
Well, that's not true. There's the ancient Jewish historian Josephus who wrote about Jesus, and he's one of the reasons why even secular scholars know Jesus historically existed.
Wrong. Told ya. Nobody outside of fundamentalist nutballs thinks that it was anything but an early Christian forgery. Even New Testament scholars, even Christian New Testament scholars don't think that. Josephus didn't write it. Josephus, a lifelong Jew, would never write, "He is the Christ." The entire passage is written in a different voice than anything else that Josephus wrote before or after. And if you simply remove it completely, the entire thing flows. So this is just nonsense, and anyone who's ever done any kind of scholarly research, they would know that. And that says nothing good about Zoomer, does it? Nothing good at all.
You really think God made billions of galaxies with billions of stars in each of them just to have a personal relationship with you?
Good question. What a complete waste, especially if there is no other life out there. Why in the world would anybody with half a brain do that? Where is your rational explanation other than, "It's a mystery," which seems to be really common among the religious? Now, I'm not saying that it couldn't have happened, but it makes no logical sense, and without a better explanation than "because I say so," or "because I believe it," or "because I have faith," I don't buy it. So, yeah, go ahead. Justify this one for us. Good luck.
Yes.
Well, that was a stupid answer. After that, he just has a picture on screen and some singing, but that's not worthwhile, and trust me, this has gone on long enough, so we're just going to skip it. This really wasn't a worthwhile anything. It was just a bunch of excuses for why he really wants to believe. Not any evidence-based explanations or answers for anything, especially not things that atheists actually say. Now, granted, I'm not all that impressed with his questions at all. I don't think he culled those from any actual atheists. I'm sure he just got them from some religious website somewhere or some video he saw on YouTube and he just put his own spin on them. So I'm not really sure what the real point of this was. It was just laughable, and that's not a big surprise. His format is also a bit of a problem because it stops him from providing any detailed answers to anything, although, as I said before, he could certainly post links down in his description, but he doesn't bother to do that. And I'm sure that works in his favor because he has no detailed answers. He knows that his intended audience doesn't care, and he's not making this video for the non-religious to begin with. It just took a very, very long time to dig through all the quickfire nonsense, and in the end, I don't know if any of it was really worth it. It'll make the Supercut fans happy down the road someday, but otherwise, how much value did we get out of this? I don't know. You tell me. Anyway, what did you think? Did Redeemed Zoomer say anything at all of substance? Anywhere in his video? Or not? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. Personally, mark me as not at all impressed, but I'm not really impressed by anything the religious have to say or do, because they're not really saying or doing anything for us, are they? They're just saying it to each other because they know that the religious aren't going to ask any of the difficult questions that need to be asked. They just really want to believe, but really wanting to believe, that's just dumb. Can we please try for a little less dumb, please? Just a little. I'm not asking for much. I wouldn't be holding my breath on that, but it's a nice thought nonetheless, isn't it?